For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived entirely within Africa. Different groups spread across eastern, southern, central, and northern Africa, developing remarkable diversity. Then something extraordinary happened. One relatively small population successfully expanded beyond Africa, not the first humans to leave, but the first whose descendants eventually spread across nearly every continent. Earlier migrations had occurred. We know this from fossils in Israel, Saudi Arabia, and even China. Yet those populations either disappeared or contributed very little genetically to living people outside Africa. The overwhelming majority of ancestry in Europeans, Asians, Australians, and Native Americans traces back to this later expansion, around 50 to 60,000 years ago. That single expansion ultimately gave rise to nearly 8 billion people alive today. Scientists once assumed humans simply waited for better weather before leaving Africa. Today the story appears far more interesting. New research suggests that something changed inside Africa itself. Humans became extraordinarily adaptable. Instead of specializing in only one environment, they learned to thrive in forests, grasslands, deserts, mountains, rivers, and coastlines. That ecological flexibility became one of humanity's greatest superpowers. When climate opened migration corridors into Arabia, these populations already possessed the knowledge and technology to survive almost anywhere. This may explain why earlier migrations faded, while this one ultimately populated the globe. Researchers debate the exact path. The evidence supports two major possibilities. One route crossed the Sinai Peninsula into the Levant. Another likely followed coastlines around the southern Red Sea into Arabia. The reality may involve both. Groups probably expanded gradually over thousands of years rather than marching as a single migration. As they entered Southwest Asia, they encountered environments unlike anything they had experienced before. They also encountered something even more remarkable. Other humans? Modern humans were not alone. Europe and Western Asia were home to Neanderthals. Farther east lived Denisovans. These populations had already occupied Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years. Rather than replacing them immediately, modern humans sometimes interbred with them. Today, nearly every person with ancestry outside Africa carries approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Many populations across Asia and Oceania also inherited Denisovan DNA. Our family tree was never simple. It resembled braided streams more than isolated branches. Some groups gradually entered Europe. This was an unforgiving world. Massive glaciers dominated the north. Open tundra stretched across much of the continent. People followed migrating herds. They hunted mammoths, horses, bison, and reindeer. For thousands of years, modern humans and Neanderthals shared parts of Europe. Eventually, Neanderthals disappeared. Their DNA, however, remains inside us. Another branch spread eastward across Asia. Unlike Europe, Asia offered incredible environmental diversity. Rainforests, steppes, mountains, river valleys, deserts. Different populations adapted to different regions while remaining genetically connected through occasional migrations. These expanding populations would eventually give rise to East Asians, Siberians, Pacific Islanders, and ultimately the first Americans. One of humanity's greatest achievements occurred astonishingly early. By roughly 60 to 50,000 years ago, humans had reached Sahel, the Ice Age supercontinent that combined Australia and New Guinea. Even during periods of lower sea level, reaching Sahel required deliberate ocean crossings. This represents some of the earliest known long-distance seafaring. Recent mitochondrial studies suggest there may have been multiple routes into Sahel, although all ultimately derive from the same successful expansion out of Africa. Eventually, humans pushed into Siberia. This was among the harshest environments on Earth. Temperatures plunged, food became seasonal, survival demanded innovation, tailored clothing, sophisticated shelters, bone needles, advanced hunting technology. These northern populations would later play an essential role in one of humanity's greatest migrations. During the Ice Age, lower sea levels exposed a vast landmass connecting Siberia and Alaska. This region is called Beringia. Groups remained isolated there before expanding into the Americas sometime after the last glacial maximum. Within only a few thousand years, humans spread from Alaska to Patagonia. Genetic evidence strongly supports that indigenous peoples of the Americas descended primarily from populations derived from Northeast Asia through this Beringian population, followed later by additional Arctic migrations. Now we arrive at one of genetics' most important concepts, Founder effects? Imagine a jar filled with thousands of colored marbles. Each marble represents a genetic variant. Now imagine only 50 marbles are randomly removed to begin a new population. Those 50 marbles no longer perfectly represent the original jar. Some colors become common, others disappear entirely. Human migrations worked much the same way. Every time a relatively small group founded a new population, certain genetic variants became more common simply through chance. This helps explain why different populations today carry different frequencies of inherited traits, diseases, and genetic markers without requiring natural selection. Founder effects accumulated repeatedly. Each migration represented another small sampling from the previous population. Genetic diversity gradually declined with increasing distance from Africa. Today, this creates one of genetics' most striking global patterns. African populations possess the greatest genetic diversity on Earth. Populations farther from Africa generally contain progressively smaller subsets of that original diversity. This observation became one of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the out-of-Africa model. From one successful expansion emerged every population living outside Africa today: Europeans, Middle Easterners, South Asians, East Asians, Pacific Islanders, Aboriginal Australians, Native Americans. Every journey built upon those before it. Migration was never the story of isolated races. It was the story of branching populations that remained connected through shared ancestry, occasional mixing, adaptation, and movement. The farther genetics advances, the clearer this becomes. Human history is not a collection of separate origins. It is one extraordinary story of exploration, survival, and expansion.